The year was 1934, and it was an ongoing investigation that had just been assigned to me by myself. Yeah, that's right. I'm no longer a real cop. I'm actually my own freelance vigilante. I've been following this dry trail for 30 years, and it just got wet. The smell of fresh cannolis fouled the air, and my nostrils twitched and sneezed. I breathed in smoke against the wind. It was November. I could tell by the smell of the air and the people around me it was November. I could tell, and I hated it. Everything about this place either turned me off or turned me around. The city was cold. Not cold in temperature, but cold and empty like the heart I never had. Back when I was on the force, we got things done. Until the Fat Cannoli bribed every cop, constable, and night watchman in town. The level of corruption made it excruciatingly hard to trust anyone, because you never knew who was being paid by who. These birds were free as the Fat Cannoli was. Those damn flying rats always swarming at the slim pickings down by the docks. Flying and circling downward like the city itself, into the cesspool that our society had become. I went to the only place I knew I could do some real dirt work research, the Daily News Archives. So I hit the books. I hit them so hard I grew a 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 12 o'clock shadow. I knew the Fat Cannoli had to be somewhere around the city, but I just didn't know where or how. I dreamt of him. I dreamt of how this man could not be stopped. Fat Cannoli, I will take you down. The Fat Cannoli, rumored to be slightly over 92. The greasiest slime ball of all the goons, gangsters, gooserbars, gooseballs, gallbladders, and goldfish. He was often seen browsing through the day's paper, or sitting at his art, or fondling his wicked mustache which ached with the pain of time. The pains of 2 wives, and only 1 wicked mustache. You could always buy any woman, or 2. He may have been 92, but he was friskier than any land mammal I'd ever seen before. My God. This guy had more warrants out for him than items on my grocery list. It was panic in the streets, with the Fat Cannoli's grasp ever tightening around the throats of every innocent man in town. The mayor had to say something, but he didn't know. Blah, 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 blah. Even the DA, who was a crooked swindler, didn't know what to say. With every spoken word, the Fat Cannoli baked another sweet, sweet pie of chaos and apple. Strudel. Benny Pepperoni Snake the Weasel II Esquire, a small man with an even smaller conscience. But women loved him all the same. He had 1 dame for every name he had, including the 2. He had a mustache that rivaled that of a Roman god. This weasel was no lay-down Sally. He had a thirst for information that could be only quenched by the purest, most dazzling, sparkling bodies of information. His knowledge of the city was impeccable, from the smallest crack to the deepest and biggest pothole on all the streets. He knew about it, and if you had the money, he had the time. See that guy right there? That's my partner. And friend, you can say that. His name's Muggsy Jones Johnson, otherwise known as Hoss the Mad Dog. He was always as tall as he was stern. His teeth were perpetually kept clean by the toothpick in his mouth. Always clean, never dirty. Been a long time, Johnny. I told Hoss something smelled fishy. Fishy like the wharf on a Saturday morning at 9:22 a.m. in June. I told him, but reluctantly, I let him go anyway. He was shot, and I was late. Too late. Too late to save him. Too late to save his life. He never took those damn shades off. Exhibit A. He went into a church. When the priest confronted him about taking his shades off, he plainly said, no. Once I had caught Benny Pepperoni Snake the Weasel II, Esquire, I interrogated him thoroughly. I refreshed his memory. I knew every rat had to have a weak spot. His happened to be pain. I kept questioning him and questioning him. But I knew that he would just keep feeding me sweet little lies.
45 guys.
I kept asking him questions that I knew he had the answers to, but he wouldn't open his lips for me.
Looking down.
So I opened them for him. I also had a lead from Benny that the Cannoli had paid off several henchmen, including himself, down by the old boat ramp near the wharf. I sensed I was drawing closer, but I just couldn't close the gap. Benny had mentioned something about the cannoli and a favorite water fountain to his liking. I somehow knew the Fat Cannoli had been here. I could smell his cologne. Bay rum. I walked to the gates of his mansion. I snooped around a bit. What? It's a trap! Get out! My final linchpin of information came from the weasel that led me to the cannoli's whereabouts. Benny taught me how to sneak into the cannoli's estate, undetected from the rear. I used camouflage to mask my approach. Something didn't feel right. It was a trap, and I was the guppy. After the weasel had cast me into the dark depths of the city runoff canal, I had time to reflect. Reflect on what had been done to me, and what I had done to my people. My lungs became hungry for air, and my throat began to choke. It seemed hopeless. It seemed like giving up was just around the corner for me. Then it hit me. Hit me like a brick right in the breadbasket. I knew. I knew it all along. I now had the missing link. What if I let the cannoli rule a dynasty? Will I tread water with barnacles on the canal floor? I felt my will fight for life and spark again. I kicked and scratched and inched my way to the promising hope that was the surface. Once I reached the surface, I smelt the cannoli's scales, and the thought crossed my mind that there was once a dry trail.
Just got wet.